number 10, Carol Danvers. Once upon a time, Carol Danvers, aka Miss Marvel, at the time, teamed up with Spider-Man to take on Mac Gargan's Venom. Mac, who we talked about on the part 1 of our list, was a particularly nasty Venom, and pretty violent and unhinged. So our two heroes worked together in a story penned by Brian Reed that depicted Carol easily stripping Gargan of Venom, although that didn't really work out as neatly as planned. The symbiote would then jump on Carol and make her his host, resulting in a Venom that had flames bursting out from its head and chest, and could also fly. Ugh. No thanks. Spider-Man was able to resolve the issue quickly by pushing her into some power lines and knocking the symbiote off of her, which then caused it to go back to Mac to finish the fight. Perhaps the best part of this bonding though is when Venom initially bonded with Carol, and then ran around and shouted, "Miss Marvel is now my favorite superhero," which is like kind of adorable and endearing, isn't it? Oh, Venom. And at number 9, Human Torch. On Earth 20051, also known as the Marvel Adventures universe, the Venom symbiote decided to bond with Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch. And considering Storm's powers, well, you can imagine how long that lasted for. The Marvel Adventures universe covered a storyline in which Spider-Man gets the black sentient alien costume, and after the Fantastic Four remove it from his body, like they do in the original run with Spider-Man before it was known as the Venom symbiote, it decides to hop onto the Human Torch. When it bonds with Johnny, he says, "Wow, it can really read my surface thoughts. Let's see if it looks as cool after I flame on." The second he bursts into flames, the Venom symbiote immediately jumps ship. Now, in case you didn't know, the symbiotes have two primary weaknesses: sonic sound waves and fire. So, yeah. Venom must have really enjoyed that little interaction. And at number 8, Red Hulk. In Venom Volume 2 Issue 13, in a story arc called Circle of 4, Thaddeus Ross bonds with Venom, and it's a little terrifying. So for context, the story involved a demonic invasion of Earth by Blackheart, Mephisto's son, in an attempt to bring hell on Earth. It kinda worked, with Las Vegas getting much hotter than it usually does, which is saying a lot. Flash Thompson, who was Venom's host at the time, let Venom bond with Ross's Red Hulk, who proceeded to beat the pulp out of Blackheart, and save the day, putting everything back in order, and by the end of it, Venom actually jumped back to Thompson, proving to Captain America, who was overseeing all this, that Flash could control the symbiote after all. And at number 7, KRON Stone of Earth TRN 590. KRON Stone is a character from Earth 928, who's a villain and a total sadist, and the half-brother of that Earth's Spider-Man, Miguel O'Hara. But on this Earth though, TRN 590, he appeared in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 3 Issue 10, back in 2016, and he bonded with the Venom symbiote and became a pretty horrific and futuristic version of the villain. He also became a member of the Sinister Six. Now initially KRON was the dude who killed the Punisher's family in the year 2099, and was almost taken out entirely by Frank Castle, left to die in a sewer. This is where he encountered Venom, who had been chilling in the sewers for decades as a means of trying to evolve. He made KRON his host and exhibited a few new abilities, like an acidic touch and a body that could become fully liquid. Eventually KRON's Venom would fight against Miguel's Spider-Man. Miguel would win, and upon discovering it was his half-brother beneath the symbiote, he managed to separate the two, and confine Venom in his lab. Venom would later break out and then bond with Namor, who we talked about on our part 1 of this list. And at number 6, Rocket Raccoon. Speaking of the part 1 on our list, we talked a little bit about how Venom got cozy with the Guardians of the Galaxy in that video, particularly with Groot. So naturally on this list, we're returning to that odd story arc and taking a glimpse at the symbiote's bonding with another one of our favorite galactic heroes, Rocket Raccoon. And look at the rabies on him. Or maybe rabies. Completely unconfirmed whether or not that is actually rabies. But if you have to ask if something is rabies, it's probably rabies. Anywho, this occurred when Flash Thompson was Venom's host, and went up into space with the symbiote in order to help him recalibrate up on his homeworld of Klyntar. The journey there clearly wasn't an easy one, and Venom escaped from containment, decided to hop onto Groot, and then after receiving a beating from Drax, jumped ship over to sweet little Rocket, everybody's favorite trash panda, and insisted that everyone get the hell off his ship. Rocket's tenure didn't last that long though, because Venom would then jump over to Drax instead when Drax tried to grab him from behind. Don't startle a trash panda. It'll never go well for you. And at number 5, Mercurio the 4D Man. After heading home to Klyntar with the Guardians, Venom rebonded with Flash Thompson and became Agent Venom, who was inducted into the Agents of the Cosmos for a brief amount of time, traveling around the galaxy to planets that they sensed were in trouble, being a hero and whatnot, disabling devices that destroyed planets' ecosystems. Now the dude behind these devices was Mercurio, a space pirate warlord, a character that was normally a Thor villain. Venom was captured by one of his minions, a panda named Picrollo, who he was blackmailing, and was then separated from Thompson. But it didn't turn out that well for the space pirate. Venom was actually tricking him in order to get information from him by bonding with him. After separating from him and returning to Thompson, he brutally beat down on Mercurio, to the point where Thompson had to stop him. Venom's initial instincts had become more increased since bonding with the space pirate made him excessively violent. And at number 4, Hawkeye. The 2015 Secret Wars story arc explores the Marvel Universe, Earth 616, combining with other various alternate universes, including one in which 2006's Civil War, the comic that the MCU film Captain America Civil War is loosely based off off of was never actually concluded. Now in this alternate universe in Secret Wars Civil War issue 3, Mac Gargan, who was the Venom at the time in 616, was dead, and a mute Venom was now working alongside Captain America. Venom went on a covert mission with Peter Parker as part of his strike team to collect something for Beast's machine, and who he was bonded to was none other than Clint Barton. He makes a super brief appearance, being super stealth, and sneaking up behind King Oct, who was the corpse of Kingpin, who was controlled by Dr. Oct's tentacles. Yeah, that does not sound fun. Now rather than using his bow and arrows though, Clint created a venom bow and flung Elektra's billy club at King Oct like an arrow. At the time he was a tad mysterious, but then was later revealed to be Hawkeye. And at number 3, the Symbioids of Earth TRN 517. This ungodly creation is a product of the Marvel Superhero Contest of Champions, specifically the 2015 one. Now for context, back in 1982 there was a storyline called the Contest of Champions in which the Grandmaster challenged death for the life of his fellow Elder, the Collector, who had been recently killed off, using superheroes from Earth to fight one another. But in the 2015 one, the story occurs in the aftermath of the 2015 Secret Wars, with the Collector and Grandmaster using the remnants of Doom's Battle World to set the stage for a new competition, calling it Battle Realm. Known as the Symbioids, these terrifying looking beasts are the combination of the Adaptoids of Battle Realm and the Venom Symbiote. The Adaptoids are the duplicates of the Super Adaptoid, a creation made by advanced idea mechanics from unstable molecules and a portion of a cosmic cube. These Symbioids were used by the Collector as obstacles in the Contest of Champions. They have the abilities of the Symbiotes and of the Adaptoids, which are capable of copying the powers, appearance, and equipment of any superpowered being in close proximity, and can only copy the powers of what it has witnessed. So, all in all, not a fun time for our heroes. And at number 2, Punisher. Gotta love a what if imprint. Last time on our part 1 list, we actually talked about 2 characters donning the Venom symbiote in a particular Marvel what if issue. Venom had managed to find his way to the Hulk, making Bruce Banner his host, and then later jumped ship onto the Asgardian god of thunder, Thor. But for this number, we're taking a look at a different what if title. What if Venom had possessed the Punisher? From 1992. Now it had a similar story as the Hulk's and Thor's. What if after Spider-Man had gotten rid of his sentient alien black costume, instead of bonding with Eddie Brock, it bonded with Frank Castle instead? Punisher Venom, after realizing that he could manipulate the symbiote webbing into bullets to fire at his enemies, goes on a bit of a rampage, and kills Microchip, Tombstone, and later Kingpin. He's eventually stopped by Spider-Man, Daredevil, and Moon Knight, with Spidey busting out a sonic blaster that he scored from the Fantastic Four. But when he shoots it at Punisher Venom, it's too late. Venom has fully bonded with Castle, but the blast is enough for Castle to regain control of his mind and confront Venom, eventually succeeding by threatening to kill them both if Venom didn't cooperate with him. Venom gets to partake in Frank's kills, and in exchange just behaves. Castle then tells Spidey that he's tamed the symbiote with the intention of using him as an instrument of vengeance. Hopefully that went well for him. And finally, in our number 1 spot, X-23. Life ain't too bad for Laura Kinney these days. After having a wildly successful cinematic debut in Logan back in 2017, and just recently finishing a run in her own comic that she was headlining in the form of all-new Wolverine in the all-new, all-different Marvel relaunch, she's got some pretty cool stuff going for her. She also bonded with Venom, which is pretty rad. Or at least for us readers. This happened in the Edge of VENOMVERSE. Laura's Wolverine got a new detail added to her origin story. Now for those unfamiliar with the character, she's the clone of Wolverine, later becoming his adopted daughter. And after breaking out of the test facility where she was created and experimented on, she would later attend school at the X-Mansion and become a member of the X-Force. She basically has all of Daddy Dearest's abilities, except her entire skeleton was infused with adamantium before she managed to escape. Now in Edge of VENOMVERSE issue 1, in an attempt to escape from her captors, she gets cornered and gassed, with the only way out being to smash her way through a glass containment cell. And guess who's inside that containment cell? Venom. Feeling her hate and rage bonds with her, and results in her kicking some major butt. She ends up escaping, living a fairly solitary life with Venom, who she manages to control quite well, until she encounters a gang of kids, and ends up sharing the symbiote with them. She's eventually pulled out of her reality and into the Venomverse reality to help fight the war. Starting us off in at number 10, the Hulk. Generally speaking, anytime the Hulk is given some sort of advantage in combat beyond what he's already capable of doing, it's pretty darn dangerous. So now imagine what our green pal was capable of when Venom decided to bond with him. Yikes. But thanks to one of Marvel's What If titles, we know exactly what would happen if Venom bonded with the Hulk. Now in What If Volume 2, Issue 4, there was a story called What If the Alien Costume Had Possessed Spider-Man? This was back in October of 1989, a year after Venom and Eddie Brock had hit the scene, so the readers knew what the symbiote was capable of now. More on that later though. So the concept for this explored what if Spider-Man waited longer before going to Mr. Fantastic, who ultimately separated separated him from the symbiote. In the story, Peter had been irreversibly bonded with Venom, and would later stumble upon the Hulk, who was on a rampage. The symbiote was like, ooh, I want to join with him, and jumped ship, bonding with the Hulk instead, who the symbiote promised to help, saying that he could aid Bruce Banner with his uncontrollable hulking out problems. But the symbiote would later give up on that loose promise and ditch the Hulk for another character that he deemed more powerful, who appears a little bit later on our list. Next up at number 9, Galactus. Now, technically speaking, Galactus doesn't really count as a character who's bonded with the symbiote, but to Spider-Man, it appears as if the god was Venom's host. Galactus Venom appears in a story in which Mysterio has completely messed with Peter Parker's head, and Peter sees Galactus donning the Venom symbiote. While it has no actual story impact aside from being a really cool splash page, it's still pretty neat to ponder what on Earth, or rather in the galaxy, Venom would do if you were ever to bond with an entity that powerful. I'd take it Peter really didn't want to find out. In our number 8 spot, Norman Osborn. Twice, actually. Norman Osborn has bonded twice with the Venom symbiote in alternate timelines. Now, once was featured in one of the many universes in the Spider-Verse stories. In this one, Norman Osborn had become the US president, and in an unprecedented move, he created something called the Variable Engagement Neurosensitive Organic Mesh, which is basically an altered version of the symbiote, something that he and his followers could wear in order to clean up America. And yes, he was totally a fascist. He even said the words, I quote, "It had to be this way, Spider-Man. We're in the business of making America great again." Yup. The second time was a little less political and occurred in the MC2 universe. Enter Normie Osborn, the son of Harry Osborn who, thanks to Spider-Girl, went from being a baddie to trying to be a good guy. But then the Venom symbiote finds him, bonds with him, and Normie actually ends up reforming it, with the symbiote sacrificing itself later on down the line to help Spider-Girl fight the Hobgoblin. Not all Osborns are bad after all. Up next, number 7, Thor. Remember that what if issue we were talking about earlier? The one in which the Hulk bonds with Venom? Well, the character that the symbiote ditches Hulk for is none other than Thor. Thor would fight against the Hulk Venom, and despite winning the battle against it, the symbiote managed to creep out and bond with the God of Thunder. While Thor struggled mentally with the symbiote, it forced him to hide out in Mount Rushmore, until they were finally defeated by Black Bolt with his hypersonic voice, and inevitably destroyed by Black Cat wielding a sonic gun. Couldn't let Black Bolt have it, could she? Moving on to our number 6, Groot. During one Guardians of the Galaxy story arc, Venom, who was bonded with Flash Thompson at the time, makes an appearance, with the narrative's focus being the Klyntar returning to his home planet. Venom ends up fighting against the Guardians, and after breaking out of a glass jar that they had trapped him in, he bonds with Groot, resulting in the character repeatedly shouting, "I am Venom." So good. Other Guardians briefly became hosts too, including Rocket Raccoon and Drax. In our number 5 spot, Patricia Robertson. Venom's bonding with Robertson is often seen as a bit of a disaster. Now, in a story written by Daniel Way under Marvel's Tsunami imprint, there was this really weird 18-issue Venom story arc that happened in 2004. Essentially, it was revealed in issue 11 of this arc that there was a Venom clone, which had come to be when Venom tried to kill the Thing by shoving his tongue down his throat. Yes, actually. And then the Human Torch burnt it off. So this burnt off piece of tongue that the Thing coughed up was found by a civilian, who then tried to sell it on eBay, where a man made out of nanites contacted him. This nanite man was apparently the nanites who inspired Noah's Ark. Yes, really. Whose master plan was to wait for an alien symbiote to be on Earth so that they could use it to cause the apocalypse. Confused? Yeah. So was like everybody else who read this story arc. Anywho, nanite old dude man guy cloned the tongue, and the symbiote was let loose until an army lieutenant by the name of Patricia Robertson shows up and becomes bonded with it, becoming a she-Venom, and her character was pretty poorly written. Her symbiote clone ended up merging with Brock's Venom, and after that we pretty much never heard about Robertson ever again. In at number 4, Deadpool. Deadpool is technically the first human host that Venom ever bonded with. This was revealed during Secret Wars, when Deadpool stumbles upon the symbiote in captivity on Battleworld. He puts it on, realizes it's alive and was interfacing with his mind, and then Venom's like, I can't really handle this very well, considering Deadpool is already insane. Deadpool then returns the symbiote moments before Spidey shows up, searching for a new costume to replace the one that he had damaged in battle. But overall, the encounter with Deadpool is a pretty comical one. This actually isn't the only time that Venom has bonded with Deadpool either. One of those other times actually happened in a What If title. Good ol' what ifs. And at number 3, the Submariner. Spider-Man 2099 was a character that first appeared in a preview in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 365, and of course he comes from the year 2099. He's a fellow named Miguel O'Hara who has managed to recreate Spider-Man's powers. He got his own series in the Marvel 2099 comic line in 1992. In his story, he encounters a character named Roman, which is Namor spelled backwards. He's an Atlantean terrorist who would be caught by Spidey only to later escape captivity, and then accidentally cause the Venom Symbiote to be released. Venom, bonded with the Submariner, transformed himself into a very piranha-esque creature who had sharp teeth on the end of his tongue. The best part is, since that went down in the series' final issue, whatever happened to Venom Roman Submariner was just never actually resolved. He dived deep down into the ocean and escaped, never to be heard from again. In at number 2, Mac Gargan. Venom once recounted his time with Mac Gargan as bad, with, I quote, thoughts like poison stingers, and that it was a thrill to kill. Mac was a mean-spirited Venom, which kind of makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Gargan, most known for being the man behind the villain Scorpion, bonded with the symbiote during Marvel Knight's Spider-Man. Working under Norman Osborn at the time, he was meant to be refitted with a new Scorpion suit when Venom popped up, and the combination was pretty ruthless. Gargan was very into being Venom, ended up working under Osborn as a Dark Avenger and a Thunderbolt, and would go around pulling off a whole lot of evil stunts, killing with zero remorse. At the time, Carnage was thought to be dead, so Gargan really stepped up to give the readers the symbiote brutality that we all know and love. Eventually though, all good things come to an end, even for Mac. The government would remove Venom from him at the end of Dark Reign, and he would return to his Scorpion alias. And finally, in our number 1 spot, Spider-Man. While Deadpool may have been the first human host, Peter Parker's Spider-Man is the character that introduced the world to the Venom symbiote. But as we mentioned in our intro, there's quite the history behind how that came to be. Now back in 1982, Marvel received a letter from a fan in Illinois named Randy Schuler, who came up with this idea that Spider-Man should get a new costume that would later become an alien character. Editor-in-chief at the time, Jim Shooter, responded to that letter. They dug the idea, and they paid Schuler a whopping $220 for the rights to the idea. Vaguely inspired by the new costume design for the new Spider-Woman character at the time, they went with a black and white outfit. It wasn't until writer Tom DeFalco and artist Ron Frenz came on board that it was determined that the costume was a sentient alien vulnerable to high sonic energy. Spidey puts the suit on, looking for new threads after being kidnapped by the Beyonder to his planet to fight in his Secret Wars. When he returns to Earth after Secret Wars, he begins to notice that the costume is acting strangely, so he gets Mr. Fantastic to help him remove it, and that's when they discover that it's actually a living organism. Mr. Fantastic keeps it in captivity in his HQ, but the symbiote breaks free, and eventually finds Eddie Brock, bonding with him and creating Venom in issue 300 of The Amazing Spider-Man, where him and Spidey would duke it out for the very first time.
In at number 10, Flash Thompson. Also known as Agent Venom, there's nothing scarier than imagining what would happen if your high school bully bonded with a symbiote. Usually the Venom symbiote's violent nature turns superheroes into villains, however in this case Thompson's military background tamed it with discipline. That being said, the scariest part of this Venom symbiote is that even Flash had a difficult time keeping the symbiote under control. After losing his legs while serving his country, Thompson had volunteered to bond with the symbiote as part of a program called Project Rebirth 2.0. Not only did the symbiote regrow his lost limbs, it also elevated his powers to that of Spider-Man's, which is a step up from being an ex-soldier bound to a wheelchair. In at number 9, Spider-Gwen. Much like the classic story of Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider, in the Earth 65 continuity, it was Gwen Stacy that followed that path instead. As such, she too was exposed to the Venom symbiote and quickly realized how scary its power was. Gwen had met with Murdoch at Oscorp in hopes of saving her father from being sent to prison. While there, scientist Dr. Elsa Brock had told Gwen she could restore her powers and cure Harry Osborn by exposing the lizard serum to the radioactive spider isotopes. A deal was made to help Harry, but after S.H.I.E.L.D. had sent bounty hunters to capture Harry, he convinced Gwen to break the deal with Murdoch. Eventually Harry would transform into the lizard, forcing Gwen to team up with the S.H.I.E.L.D. bounty hunters Shadowcat and Logan, and using her isotopes she turned the lizard serum in Harry's veins into venom. But the symbiote would then jump from host to host before finally bonding with Gwen. In at number 8, Deadpool. Once bonding with the Venom symbiote, the Merc with a mouth became known as Venompool, and made us wonder how long it would last before the symbiote couldn't handle living with this superhero host. During a battle over a statue, Deadpool was rescued by the black and white symbiote that was being hunted by the alien bounty hunters Killer Thrill, Guz, and Cold War. Recognizing the symbiote and needing the backup for this fight, Deadpool let the Venom symbiote take over to defeat Danson. Although the Deadpool Back in Black comic books are not the first time this symbiote has latched onto Wade. In Deadpool's Secret Wars, it was revealed that the two have bonded in the 1984 Secret Wars. It's a lot of secrets. In at number 7, Spider-Man. Peter Parker is the OG host of the Venom symbiote in the Marvel Comics, and although he's not the first in terms of continuity, he's still the first that we remember most. While on Battleworld during the 1984 Secret Wars, Parker discovers the symbiote and mistakes it for a cool new suit, which, fair assumption, I mean look how much cooler it made Tobey Maguire. All of his hopes and dreams of being more confident in his cool new black suit though were soon destroyed after realizing he accidentally just carved a perfect path for what will become his greatest enemy. The black suited Spidey still stands as one of the more scary versions of Spider-Man, at least in our opinion. In at number 6, Miss Marvel. Before becoming Captain Marvel and before the Venom symbiote, Carol was known as Miss Marvel. During the events of Siege, where Norman Osborn was leading an assault on Asgard, where the Venom symbiote had been just snatching up Asgardians and consuming them, in order to quell this destruction, both Miss Marvel and Spider-Man confronted Venom, who at the time was under the control of Mac Gargan. Spidey questioned him about his recent horrendous actions, which included starting a gang war and eating squirrels. I'm not sure which is worse. In the middle of battle, Miss Marvel lends the assist by literally yanking Mac out of the symbiote, for which it did not take kindly to. In response, the Venom symbiote merged with her, forcing Carol to run amok through the city. In at number 5, Guardians of the Galaxy. This is one of the scarier yet most exciting times that a superhero bonded with the Venom symbiote, mainly because it was more than one superhero who had their turn with the psychotic plague. The first host it chose was Groot, and once being knocked into next week by Drax, it evaded attacks until latching onto Rocket Raccoon. With alien-like firearms attached to his terrifying little body, the symbiote attempted to take control of the ship. If that wasn't scary enough for you though, Drax to the rescue again, and upon Drax trying to rip the symbiote off of Rocket, it promptly switches over to the more powerful Drax. Now as Venom Drax, he takes control and flies the ship to the home planet of the symbiotes. In at number 4, X-23. During the Edge of Venomverse series, we got to explore Venoms from other realities, and in the same complex that was experimenting on X-23, also known as Laura Kinney, they also just so happened to be working on the Venom symbiote. Coincidence? I think not. It was only a matter of time before the two bonded, over their share of long walks on the beach, leading to a massacre that befell anyone attempting to stop Laura from escaping. And after arriving in New York City, this X-23 symbiote became a monster of sorts, the kind that you hear about in urban legends. Even scarier is that Laura, who bears a striking resemblance to Wolverine, actually would give in to the symbiote's power. In at number 3, the Punisher. Frank Castle isn't like your average superhero, but his fair share of heroic deeds earns him a spot on this list. If you weren't scared of the Punisher to begin with, the Venom Punisher will certainly give you chills. In fact, I don't know if there's another character that personality-wise fits better than Frank Castle in the Venom symbiote. Unfortunately, we never were able to delve into too much of what this match made in hell would look like due to its limited run in the Marvel's What If series. Like many of its hosts, the Punisher had trouble trying to keep it under control, but with similar desires he manages and decides to keep it, even though it forced him to have a grudge with Spider-Man that ultimately ended in him being forced out of the suit. In at number 2, Wolverine. In an attempt to find the perfect host for the Venom symbiote, a group decides to bond it with Wolverine, which ends up going sideways real quick. In theory, it's a good assumption that Logan would be the best host. I mean, he's got that healing factor combined with Venom, that could essentially make an immortal symbiote. In the 5-issue alternate reality Edge of Venomverse we mentioned before, Wolverine became much bigger and looked absolutely terrifying as Wolvenom. He was so powerful it would take the force of a nuclear bomb to separate the venomized Wolverine. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Red Hulk. This is by far not only our favorite, but also one of the scariest times that a superhero wore the Venom symbiote. Sure, he's not that much of a superhero technically, but he has done some good things. I mean, we gotta give it up for the Red Hulk. That's why he's our number 1 spot. And during a storyline known as the Circle of 4, the Red Hulk ended up taking the Venom symbiote from Flash Thompson as well as the Spirit of Vengeance, creating this cocktail of destruction unlike anything we've ever seen before. It is by far one of the most intimidating versions of Venom ever, and rightfully so. There's a lot of evil all mixed together, but how else was he supposed to take on Blackheart and his minions? I'm so surprised they just didn't end it with Blackheart seeing the monstrosity and just waving a white flag like, nope, we're done. Alright, it's all good. You win. You win. Please don't kill me.
Now, you know that we love some symbiotes on this channel, as do you all. There's no denying that the concept of a warm, fuzzy life form that wraps itself around your very DNA, absorbing your life essence as a host and resulting in, well, tentacles and tendrils and big teeth. Yeah, the thought can be pretty alluring, but forget about Eddie Brock, forget about Cletus Cassidy and Flash Thompson. What about the Ayucha? The spacefaring alien predator race, and a fully formed ancient predator that's earned its blood in the deep, dark depths of space. Yeah. Now that's what I'm talking about. We know quite a hefty amount through the Venom, Carnage and Spider-Man run about what happens to a humanoid when it goes through exposure from a symbiote and the resulting physical and metaphysical shifts that take place both in the body and in the psyche. In most cases, the host may find themselves incredibly physically fit, slender, lean, chiseled like a hulking demonic Greek Adonis, or in some cases they might not even possess a human form. As a plot device, the symbiote has cropped up in a swathe of bizarre and differing forms. Space dragons, T-Rex venom, a demonic car. There's no telling what the sentient symbiotes can twist themselves into. The main thing that feeds a symbiote is its propensity for adrenaline. They are pure, unabashed adrenaline junkies that feast off of the hormones unleashed in their host's physical body, urging them to perform death-defying stunts and bloodthirsty combat. And what a partner to pair that desire with than with the predator species, an entire race whose code of honor is to perpetuate the thrill of the hunt. Well, I think they get along just fine. The first and most obvious change in a predator/symbiote bonding is the shift in physical form, and while the average predator stands at way over 7 feet, it's safe to say that we'd be in for a rather large hulking beast. Eddie Brock, who's actually a pretty tall dude at 6'3", leaps up to a massive 7'6" as Venom. So yeah, it'd be safe to say that the predator would be way over 9 feet tall, even if we're taking into account the average height of the Ultra Hunter. That's pretty massive. Also, the most glaringly obvious question, and we do have to answer it, is what the hell would happen to its jaws? As we know, both Venom and the Predator have pretty iconic teeth, shall we say, and the collision of the two may result in something the likes that we've never before even imagined. Personally, I imagine it being a cross between the Sarlacc pit of Tatooine and the Carnage symbiote's grin with a little sprinkle of Cthulhu. If that's not terrifying enough, then it's also incredibly toxic, taking on the shared properties of Venom's innate pungent poison. Also, Venom dreadlocks, which is dope. Also, we know that symbiotes are highly adept at camouflage and blending in with their surroundings. Who else is an expert at that? Yeah, the Predator. I'm not entirely sure how a symbiote would integrate the ultra tactical armor into its arsenal of tentacle weaponry, and although they might not exactly be able to replicate the entirety of the Predator's gear, but if we take Agent Venom as an example, they'd be able to haul a hell of a lot of kit conveniently inside themselves. The word cornucopia springs to mind, but deadly. On the topic of physicality, we also know that the average predator are incredibly physically capable, easily outmatching even a highly conditioned human in unarmed combat, and possessing the ability to land blows that can shatter concrete. While you pair that with the Venom symbiote, who already increases the average human to this baseline and then some, and we've got a creature that's capable of Hulk level feats of strength. The Predator also demonstrates a genetic proficiency to self-heal, being highly resilient to physical damage and capable from recovering from multiple gunshot wounds with essentially zero medical attention. Well, if we pair this with the Venom symbiote, who has already shown that the creature craves self-healing hosts like Wolverine, X2 and Deadpool, then we've pretty much got a perfect match and a nigh immortal predator symbiote hybrid under the correct circumstances. Things are looking pretty sweet for this cosmic buddy comedy. But there is a downside to this whole debacle, and it's fit to be a tough one for our predator friend. As a symbiote bonds with a host, it enhances their creature's empathic senses in the form of an insatiable craving for intense emotion and a parasitic ability to detect its food source from a wide area. The host shares this ability like a weird bargain basement spidey sense, and I'm feeling like it'll have a negative impact on the predator's innate tracking ability. The predator already naturally see in a thermal range, paired with their highly advanced biomask, they can see on all levels of the spectrum, so with a symbiote buzzing around interfering with that, it's going to be a rough ride to begin with. But as both the hunters and symbiotes have in common, they're highly adaptable creatures, culturally and innately, and I've got quite a good feeling that this partnership would be highly profitable. Imagine simultaneously hunting down a xenomorph as a symbiote predator. The adrenaline kick that would be coursing through their shared veins would be a punch-drunk cocktail that the Venom symbiote could never shake. It'd be completely addicted. Forget Eddie Brock, Predator Venoms in town.
Starting us off in at number 10, X-23 from the Venomverse. We're going to begin our list with a handful of Venom alternates that initially appeared in the Venomverse story arc. Starting off with Laura Kinney of Earth 24398, an alternate of Kinney who, much like her 616 counterpart, is a clone of Wolverine, created and raised in a facility to be an assassin. While there, she had attempted to break out 4 times, and on the 5th try, while cornered in the laboratory, she punctured a tank by accident with her claws. Inside of that tank was the Venom Symbiote, who then broke free and bonded to Laura. Now equipped with all of Venom's powers, she managed to escape the facility for good, making her way over to New York City where she would help and befriend the Runaways before being drawn into the events of Venomverse and teleported to a different reality. While she might not be a terrifying host when bonded with Venom, X-23 is by far one of the scariest looking alternate versions out there. Speaking of characters with adamantium claws, that brings us to our number 9 spot, Wolverine Venom. Another Venomverse character. This Venomized Wolverine, who first appeared in Edge of Venomverse in issue 4 in 2017, is from Earth 17673. He has the same history as another alternate version of Wolverine, known as Old Man Logan, who hails from Earth 807128, diverting from that history when Logan told Bruce Banner Jr. the truth about his parentage, causing Banner Jr. to beat Logan to a pulp. Now for context, in Old Man Logan, after killing the Hulk, Logan takes Bruce Banner Jr. in, raising him as his own. Now on this Venomized Logan's Earth, he tells Bruce Jr. the truth about that, Bruce loses it, and then teams up with Archangel and Ashley Barton to kill Logan. The Venomized T-Rex from Old Man Logan makes an appearance during this conflict and eats Wolverine, only for the Venom Symbiote to jump ship from the dinosaur and bond with Wolverine instead. With his newfound powers, Venom Logan kills Archangel and Barton, but can't bring himself to kill Bruce Jr., despite the symbiote goading him on. The character was seemingly killed off in the Venomverse event during the story arc's climax. Moving on to number 8, Deadpool Venom. Last Venomverse character on our list, people, we promise. We can't help it that they're so awesomely terrifying. Wade Wilson of Earth 41715 is a version of Deadpool who has been bonded to the Venom symbiote. Insanity and a hunger for human brains. What a combo. Before Venomverse, Wade was contracted to investigate a scientist named Dr. Scott, who was working on creating bioweapons and synthetic organs using a newly discovered species of prehistoric tapeworm. Upon looking into it, though, Wade would learn that the tapeworms were sentient, possessing a hive mind, and had taken over the bodies of not only Dr. Scott, but the other scientists in the lab too. Lucky enough, the lab was also home to the Venom Symbiote in this universe. Deadpool, who had bonded with the symbiote in the past, released it and then bonded with it again in order to expel the tapeworms from his own body, as well as killing the possessed scientists. Going by the name of Venompool, Wade used the symbiote to get rid of all the parasitic organs and tapeworms at a nearby hospital. I guess Venompool is all bark, no bite when it comes to the scary category? I mean, unless you're on the other end of it and he's whooping your butt, in which case, probably terrifying. Up next, number 7, Magic Venom. Magic Venom is a fun one. In 2019, after parting ways with Venom during Volume 4 of the Symbiotes self-titled series, Eddie Brock and his son Dylan, who didn't realize he was his son at the time, find themselves in the middle of a dark elf invasion of Earth in a crossover called War of the Realms. It was a big story event. In trying to protect Dylan, Eddie starts fighting off dark elves with his bare fists. No superpowers. No venom. This attracts the attention of one of Malekith's war witches, who offers Eddie something called a dream stone. This stone brings one's dreams and desires to life. So Eddie takes it and with it creates an artificial symbiote, which has become known as Magic Venom. It's taller, thinner, and more ghoulish than the regular Venom, covering Eddie in spikes and giving him razor-sharp claws. It's also a murderous creature, so there's that. Up next, number 6, Edwin Brock. Coming from Earth 311, Edwin Brock is the Eddie Brock of Marvel's 1602, an alternate reality set in the year of 1602, during the very end of the Elizabethan era. Brock appears in 1602 Witch Hunter Angela, and in which he lives on the outskirts of York as an apprentice to the town's printer. Get it? Because it's like journalism. Edwin made a deal with the Enchantress in order to enchant Anne Weying, the town's most beautiful woman, and get her to marry him. Sneaky, sneaky. But when Angela the Witch Hunter found out about this, she tried to stop him, and in the process, Edwin transformed into this alternate version of Venom, a monstrous creature with a ravenous hunger for flesh. Up next, number 5, Venom 2099. Not to be mistaken with the Venom of Spider-Man 2099, more on that one later. This Venom is Aaliyah Bell, a character from Earth TRN 767 who first appeared in Venom 2099 issue 1 in February of 2020. pretty recent. Having been badly burned in an incident that also took her mother's life, Aaliyah has scars all over her left arm that made her a target for bullying in school. As a teenager, she underwent an experimental treatment to remedy her condition, and during the process, witnessed visions of an ancient dark god bonded to a creature of living darkness. Wonder where that sounds familiar? It's no. Once she awoke, the treatment worked, but turns out it had some side effects. She began turning into venom. She would discover that the treatment had bonded her with a piece of the Venom Symbiote, with the corporation behind the treatment, Alchemax, planning on using Aaliyah as a super soldier. Empathizing with Venom's situation and his desire to be made whole once more, she broke into Alchemax and reunited Venom with the rest of himself. Venom then agreed to not eat anyone if Aaliyah continued to be his host. Aw, how sweet. He's like, another person who's down for heroics. Guess I won't be eating those brains, back on the chocolate. If you have no idea what that means, you should probably check out one of our other Venom top 10 lists. We talk about the brains a lot, like actual human brains. Get your mind out of the gutter. And at number 4, KRON Stone. Spider-Man 2099 takes place in the alternate universe of Earth 928. It's a future reality. And in it, Spider-Man is Miguel O'Hara, who has an older half-brother by the name of KRON Stone. Now, KRON has had a rough life. He was constantly abused as a child by an android housekeeper, no less, who thought he was a dog. That sucks. This caused him to become a bully himself. A sadist, he constantly tormented Miguel to the point where the latter tried to kill Stone. That's intense. When we first meet the character, Stone is the one who gives orders to have the 2099 version of the Punisher, Jake Gallows, and his family killed. In retaliation, Gallows stabs Stone, fatally wounding him, and then dumps his body into a sewer. This is where KRON meets the Venom Symbiote. As he lays dying, a black ball bumps into him. It bonds itself to him, creating venom. And he ain't easy on the eyes, people, that's for sure. He's mutated over the years, now having acidic blood and saliva, and goes on a rampage to torment Miguel by hurting or straight up murdering those close to him. Moving on to number 3, the Ultimate Venom. Hailing from Earth 1610, Ultimate Venom from the Ultimate Universe first hit the scene in Ultimate Spider-Man issue 33. It's a lot of Ultimate. Initially, his design, according to co-creator and artist Mark Bagley, was meant to be more monster than supervillain, making him a, I quote, huge, cancerous, tumorous creature. I mean, I think they succeeded, because monster he is. Ultimate Venom differs quite a bit from his 616 counterpart. For starters, he's not an alien symbiote. Instead, he's the second stage of a genetically created suit designed by Peter Parker's father and Eddie Brock Sr. Peter and Eddie Brock Jr. are pals. Now, the suit is supposed to cure severe diseases because it bonds itself to the user and protects them from both internal and external harm, tailored to a specific individual's DNA. Here's where things get a little eerie. Since each suit is individualized, if someone puts on the suit who isn't meant to wear it, the suit will constantly harm them and require that they need a source of nourishment consistently. And that nourishment? Organic flesh, people. After an accident, Venom would briefly bond with Peter, who would break free of the suit. Peter would then reveal his identity to Eddie Jr., who, embittered, would go to the lab and take another sample of the Venom suit, bonding it to himself. He would then immediately murder a janitor, and, unable to control the suit, he was fully consumed by it, becoming ravenous and chaotic. Up next at number 2, Venomized Galactus. Venom plus Galactus. Yeah, that's utterly horrific if you ask us. This combination takes a cosmic entity who literally devours planets for sustenance and combines that immense power with a symbiote who's known to be lethal, has a history of committing genocide, likes to eat brains, as we mentioned earlier, made Mac Gargan a cannibal, and gave birth to a homicidal psychotic symbiote who terrorized New York multiple times. So yeah, you can see why this Venomized Galactus was a complete nightmare for Peter Parker when he first laid eyes on it in Web of Spider-Man issue 90. Luckily, this was just an illusion created by Mysterio, but nonetheless an incredibly scary one. Also, good on you, Mysterio, that's actually very creative and scary. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, the T-Rex Venom. Yes, this is a Tyrannosaurus Rex that has been bonded with the Venom symbiote. And yes, it is a terrifying combination. This alternate version of Venom from Earth 807128 is commonly referred to as the Venomsaurus Rex. It appears in the Savage Land in Old Man Logan, and of course tries to kill Logan and an elderly blind Hawkeye. Turns out, it wasn't just attacking them for the sake of wanting to spice up its life. Venomsaurus Rex's past was explored further in Old Man Hawkeye, in which it was revealed that Venom had bonded with a clone of Jamie Madrox, aka
Multiple Man, creating an army of Venoms. Venom had beef with Barton, who lures the Venom army out into the desert where he knows there is a few dinosaurs kicking around, including T-Rexes. This works out for him, with the T-Rex attacking Venom and Hawkeye driving off as the prehistoric beast chomps down on Venom's body. Clearly, by the time Old Man Logan happens, Venom has decided to bond with the T-Rex, seeing it as a fitting host, and decides to take his revenge on Hawkeye and consequently Logan in the process.